It's Song Talk Radio.
Welcome to Song Talk Radio, the show with songwriters talking to other songwriters about the craft of songwriting. We share tips, tools, and techniques, and together we all become better at writing songs. I'm your host, Neil Modi, and with me, my co-host, Phil Embry. How you doing, Phil?
I am pretty thankful at the moment, but I'm sure once this podcast goes out, we'll be post-thankful. So in general, I'm quite thankful.
Yes, yeah. Canadian Thanksgiving coming up for all our Canadian listeners. American listeners, you got a little bit of time.
Yeah, that's true.
You don't have to be thankful just yet.
We get to be thankful before Halloween.
Exactly. And then we can gorge on the candy. But I guess the Americans get Black Friday the next day, so they can gorge on the shopping.
That is true. We don't get Black Friday or any kind of Friday here, really.
Well, they have Black Friday stuff going on. I'm sure it's already started, Black Friday sales, but...
That's true. That's just a lie.
Then there's Cyber Monday and Giving Tuesday, and I don't even know. They'd probably come up with something for Wednesday.
Grumbly Wednesday.
Do whatever you want. Do whatever you want Wednesday.
Gassy Thursday.
Gassy Thursday. It's after all the leftover turkey sandwiches. Okay. Everyone else, please send in your comments and questions to at Song Talk Radio on Facebook or Instagram, or feedback at songtalk.ca for the email, and we'll share your thoughts on the show. And please visit songtalk.ca to see the show post for this episode, to visit links to resources we mention, and to download lyric and chord sheets to follow along with the songs that we feature. You're going to want to do that for this episode, I'm certain. Tonight, we're happy to welcome back to the show Canadian performer and creator Amanda Sum. How are you, Amanda?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Dialing in from Vancouver. We are coast to coast to coast. Well, coast to coast, something in the middle tonight. Great. And before we get to Amanda's really cool project, just another alert about our Songwriting Challenge 2024, which is to write a holiday song. Kindly send in your submissions to the challenge by November the 18th. Is that before or after American Thanksgiving? Who knows? But we'll find out. And we want to give a thanks out to Victor for sending in his song last week. It's very cool. And of course, the listener songs, as you send them in, we are compiling them, and we will have a special episode or two as needed to showcase the listener songs. Phil and I are going to be sharing our answers to the challenge in the coming weeks. How's yours coming along, Phil?
It is conceptual at this point. But I'm hoping this weekend, actually, as it's going to be a long weekend, I'll have some time to sit down and actually really break the back of it. But I think I have kind of an idea. I think I'll be going for kind of a Motown-y thing. Because I love old Motown stuff, and it's been a bit of a focus of mine to try to recreate the Motown sound as much as I can in my home recording, because it's great stuff.
Wow.
But yeah, that might be fun.
Looking forward to that. Myself, yeah. I've actually had my concept like a few weeks ago, but on the way to the songwriters meetup that we had a few weeks ago, I jotted down a really rough draft of the lyrics on the subway on the way downtown. And that sat for a couple of weeks, and just this past weekend and last night I started to formulate some kind of a musical structure for it. So I think I've got something of a sketch. You know, as usual for me, I write crappy lyrics and then do the music, and then, at least this has been my thing lately, I write crappy lyrics, do the music, and then go back and try and make the lyrics better. So
gotta get started somewhere.
Yeah, get started somewhere. I just need an excuse to get into the music stuff. then I can go back. But yeah, so yeah, because I'm sharing mine in a couple of weeks from now, so I gotta get rolling on it. Cool.
But it also doesn't have to be fully produced tracks. It can be just you and your instrument recording on your phone. That is perfectly fine. It doesn't have to be a whole thing. It does
not have to be fully produced. I've got a bit of a vision for the instrumentation, so I want to make sure I at least put a little bit of that in it before.
Yes. And it doesn't even have to be finished, to be honest with you.
No. You could still be unhappy with stuff. You could be, I still need a bridge, but I haven't thought of anything yet. Sure, all. It's all good.
That would actually be awesome. So
yeah, we actually love songs in progress. they're very meaty.
That is what this whole thing
discussion.
started off as, actually.
Yeah.
People sharing songs in progress. So it's always a good thing.
Yeah, and often that's what our songwriters meetup is about, is what people bringing in songs that are not quite finished. They're not released on Spotify yet. They're just, sketches or things that are ongoing.
Yeah.
Ideas. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Cool. All right. Okay. On to the main event. Amanda Sum is a performer and creator who dances between music and theater. Her latest EP, Does It Make Me Naive If I've Never Been Part of Something Where I've Meant More to Them Than They Did to Me? Was released in June 2024, accompanied by a short film featuring 13 directors, which is due later this year. Her 2022 music video, Different Than Before, garnered a Juno nomination and won the South by Southwest Music Video Jury Award. As theater replacements collider artist, Amanda created New Age Attitudes live in concert, which premiered in 2023 and will continue to tour in 2025. Amanda is currently working on her next full-length record and is developing its accompanying experimental theater show. Welcome back to Song Talk Radio, Amanda Sum.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you back on the show. I remember last time you were on the show, we really talked about this kind of intersection between music and theater, and really pushing a narrative outside the scope of one song, and kind of really expanding things to a big thing. And your latest EP is certainly that, isn't it? It's kind of multi-part. We'll say.
Yes, for sure, multi-parts. But yeah, I call it an EP / a suite, because I think in the form of classical music, where we're thinking about the full thing as movements, that's kind of how I view this project, as different movements that create a full suite.
What was the thinking? What was the sort of your plan for this? What was sort of brought this on? It's a kind of an unusual approach to release, especially these days on streaming, which is so individually track focused.
Totally, it's terrible for the streaming age, but that's not really what my priority thinking of it was for this. But it definitely, I can't not think about that once the project's done. But when I started writing these songs, they were pretty short, and I knew that they kind of all blended into a similar theme or journalistic overview of this aspect of my life, and I knew that both sonically and tonally, there were different orders that these songs could exist in, and I then kept adding more of them, and so there was a certain point when I had maybe 4 or 5 that I knew it would be a medley. First, it was a medley of 5 songs, and then as it kept expanding, I called it a suite.
Okay, so what wasn't just because we haven't played it yet, let me just describe for our listeners what the structure of it is. It's 15 minutes ish, and how many tracks are there?
There's 18 songs.
So 18 songs in 15 minutes, basically.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Okay, and very small, short. So you started out not knowing that it was going to be a medley, but just writing really, really short songs.
Well, the first song that I wrote on it is number 3 or 4, Pretty and Pale, it's called. And that one's actually one of the longer songs, funnily, of the whole thing. And then I think the second song I wrote on it is the very first song that has a reprise later on, which is kind of just like a little succinct statement, I would say. And I was thinking of these songs as little questions or little peeks into these different experiences, and didn't necessarily think that each of these songs, when I started them, needed to expand into a fully structured pop structure form, and that these songs could exist as just little short bits, and as they are strung together, create a a bigger whole.
When you're writing them, are you thinking about how they fit together? Like, do you have to think about the sort of the beginning of the song? Because they're still individual songs, they happen to all go together, but do you have to think about how, like, they end and how they begin?
Not when I was writing them necessarily, but when I kind of reordered things, I would reorder them in a way that would make sense for the key, or would make sense for if I needed something a little lighter hearted here, or something that was faster paced here. I would be thinking about beginnings and ends then at that point.
Yeah, because in some ways it's kind of like if you have this thing you want to talk about in the whole narrative, it is a sort of thing that, if you're writing a 4-minute song or a 3-minute song, you might say, okay, maybe this part of it could be a verse 2, and this part of it could be a bridge, and this part could be a pre-chorus, or whatever, and structure a song that way. But you've instead made, fairly distinctive different things that have different tempos and different keys and different
totally
things.
Yeah.
So in some ways it's kind of similar. Maybe with 18 songs you can sort of explore more. Was that kind of a consideration of I'm doing something here that I couldn't do in, say, a 6-minute song even?
Yeah, I think probably subconsciously that was there, but I don't think it was a I think more so when I would write a shorter song, it wasn't that I thought that well, I think a lot of them I would write, say the first one, for example, where I think it's 13 seconds long, or it's 15 maybe. And in another world, that alone could have been an opening to, I could write another verse if I tried right now, or it could have been the chorus of something else that I would write later. But I was hearing it and thinking about it and playing it and thinking, actually, this is enough. This gets across everything I wanted to say on this particular subject. And just because it's 15 seconds doesn't mean it's not a song.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And so I think a lot of the times when I was writing these other things, I was also, maybe I was a bit jaded in the subject matter of thinking, these people that I'm writing about don't deserve a full song from me. They could just have a little, Yeah, they didn't make that big of a mark on me, even though clearly they did.
You only get 12 seconds.
Exactly. So, I think there's a lot of fun and joy in that, and a bit of cheekiness. And I think a lot of the sweet, there's a lot as well, moments of pretty soft, tender things. And so I like to, in this work and in a lot of the other work that I do, always try to find bits of joy and bits of moments where I can feel like I can release something and feel lighthearted around a subject that can often feel a bit heavier.
Cool.
Yeah.
There's definitely a theatrical bent to a lot of the work because of all your work in theater. Listening to this, it seemed that this could actually be the basis for a musical or a full, like even a bigger work. Have you ever thought about that, or you just want to keep it into these small ideas?
I've been told that before as well, and I think a lot of my writing, especially with this project, can lean into kind of a theatrical sense in the way of storytelling. And for this project in particular, I don't see myself expanding any of the songs. And I think the kind of pull on it for me, and the thing that intrigues me and keeps me excited about this project is the fact that they are short. And I mean, I don't know about writing musicals. I haven't really, I've thought about that in different contexts, but not particularly with this, using this as a source.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, why don't we take a listen? So we're gonna play the first few minutes of this suite. But of course, there'll be links on the show post to the entire thing. It's all on Bandcamp and Spotify, and we love Bandcampers. So that's always
the
cool.
whole work is 15 minutes, I believe.
Yeah, about almost 16. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a listen.
I can take a mistake and make it a hobby. I can wake up at 8 in a different body. I could be innocent and I could be naughty. It's not me to get everything right. It's not me to get everything right. Every time I think it's going fine, their interest dies, and I'm the one who kills it. So silly me, so gullible. I'm still surprised. I never see it coming. They think I'm foolish. I think they're numb, 'cause they never feel it. They all just run. I'm not the one they wanna know. Oh no, no, no. I was told no one complains about going too slow, but I've gone too slow that someone let me go. I was told that if you feel it, do it fast, but I've gone too fast that someone didn't last. Now I know the answer to the problems that I'm facing, whether waiting round or rushing in, because I think I'm certain that timing doesn't matter if you're the chaser or the chasing. It's not about the pacing, it's the person. It's not about the pacing, it's the person. And the person that you're dating won't be perfect, but it should be worth it to try it out. Oh, it should be worth it to try it out. They say they'll choose me for their romance, but put me beside a white girl and I don't stand a chance. I know the outcome time and again. They wanna know what it's like to kiss a girl who's different. The ones they end up with are pretty and pale. I'm just a pit stop before they return to the blonde hair. They're tall and have blue eyes. I'm nothing special, I know this much, but surely I could use a little more respect, just a touch. I'd like a refund on time I've spent giving myself only to be someone's experiment. The ones they end up with are pretty and pale. I'm just a pit stop before they return to the blonde hair. They're tall and have blue eyes. Return to the blonde hair. They're tall and have blue eyes. Oh. In a room full of exes, it'd be fairly empty. The few that I liked in my early 20s. One's in a corner sipping a beer. One's sitting down thinking, why am I here? One of them timidly trying to impress. They were my favorite, but I digress. In a room full of exes, I know what it'd be. A room full of people who don't care for me, who don't care for me. I I can take a mistake and make it a hobby. I can wake up at 8 in a different body. I could be innocent and I could be naughty. It's not me to get everything right. It's not me to get everything right. Something seemingly little can make me hate myself. Like when the guy I like sleeps with someone else. Something seemingly little can make me hate myself.
Wow. Really, really interesting.
Thank you.
I love the lines, in a room full of exes, it'd be fairly empty. A few that I liked in my early 20s. I thought that was such a great pair of lines.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of really open sort of vulnerability here. But the thing that I'm really finding interesting about this is that with this kind of approach you're taking, you're not thinking about traditional structure. You're not thinking about what's the verse, what's the chorus. It's just kind of laying out some thoughts, almost like it's a journal or a diary entry or something. And it's just like spilling it out and letting the melody kind of go where it wants to sort of tell the story.
Yeah.
Without this is the central hook and this is and that sort of thing. Which is
and
really
even the way like you handled the ends of the songs was so interesting, because like in "It's Not Me," which is the first bit, you have the two lines: "It's not me to get everything right. It's not me to get everything right." The normal temptation would be to do the second "It's not me to get everything right." That would resolve. It's not me to get everything right. It's not me to get everything right. But you don't do it, which helps it flow into the next bit. But it's kind of nice because I think it's easy to do something like this and then really look at them as if they are complete full songs that have, that actually have a cadence at the end, that all have that kind of da-da-dum, and then going into the next one, where these really do kind of flow together. It's was that something you consciously decided to not go, or was that just a natural outcome?
I think that was just the natural outcome. And some of them, I would say, wrap up better than others or have firm endings.
You wrote them, and you said you did the sort of sequencing of things afterwards. Did you change any endings at that point to sort of make the transitions more contrasty or less contrasty, or whatever you wanted, like resolved or not resolved, that sort of thing? When you started thinking about the whole suite?
Yeah, I think, for the most part, they ran in order of how I wrote them, except for a few. I changed orders, or I took certain songs out because I didn't feel like they pertained to it anymore. But for the most part, I was writing in order, and then I kind of knew where one ended, and I would maybe change a key of something as I was writing it. Because
for the most part, the transitions are they're pretty smooth. I mean, nothing that really stands out as jarring. So you were always cognizant of like, I'm going to go to an adjacent key, not like right across, 4 flats to like 6 sharps or something like that.
Yeah. And it's also for me too, because I play it live. And so when I play it live, I'm just playing through. So it's for me to know, okay, if I end something here, I know in this chord, I can start singing the song in this key, and then I'll follow here. But it's for my own brain as well to be able to play it.
Right. So when you perform this thing, you're sitting with your electric piano and you're blasting through the whole thing.
I'm running through. See you in 16 minutes. Talk to you after.
Really?
Yeah.
That's got to be an interesting show.
That would be. I love the approach, how it's in some ways so minimal with the piano and the vocal, but you have this wonderful orchestration of strings.
The strings are nice, actually,
and other instruments, which just kind of give it this very subtle liveliness, but they don't overpower things. And at first I thought it was just going to be you and the voice, which would have been fine, but those adding the strings really does help bring it out. There's so many great little hooks and parts of the song that I really love, and I'm thinking, gee, you might not want to keep those lyrics, but you could take that and make it into a really killer pop tune because they're so hooky, and it's just, but they go, and you also you don't repeat things very much,
No. Yeah.
which is another interesting thing that people in Western music tend to repeat. That's the whole thing. Yeah, verse, the first line of the verse is one thing. You basically repeat that melody, and then there's like a variation on the melody, and then you reprise that melody, and that's your verse. But there's not a lot of repetitions here, which is I guess, a very classical approach.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so too. Like there are a couple, Pretty and Pale has kind of a more verse, chorus structure.
A little bit, yeah.
And then It's Kind of Funny kind of has a bit of a verse chorus. But other than that, it is pretty, say the idea, leave it, let's go to the next kind of running thought.
Yeah. So it wasn't a temptation for you or an inclination for you to say, I want to repeat some of this again, or you just like I've said it once and that's enough.
Kind of that. I mean, I think, specifically for this project, that wasn't the deal. And there are for sure other songs that I've written that as you know, I've written longer, more regularly
pop songs.
Formed pop songs. And and in those times with writing, I'm thinking, oh yeah, this is the hook, and this is where that's the chorus that I will repeat. But with these songs, it didn't feel right. Yeah.
It's almost like you set up this kind of playground to play in, and you said they're going to be short and they're going to be, to the point, and the, lyrics are going to be kind of, in this, journal diary kind of manner, and that's kind of it. And then you give yourself the permission, or you allow yourself the denial to not stray outside of that, right? And just say, I'm going to stick within these parameters, and that's what it's going to be. And that gives the whole thing a kind of, a unified vibe, really.
Yeah.
It does feel like one thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about how you actually wrote this, because a lot of people will sit down with a guitar, they'll play, and they might just keep everything in their head, or, have the chords down and then just write the lyrics. But because every line is sort of its own thing, were you actually having to write this down on a music notation? Or how did you actually write this down and remember it? Because it's not an easy thing, considering there's no repetition to lean on.
I didn't notate anything until we began pre-production to record it. And I'd been playing it live in different iterations, shorter versions of it as it kept growing. And it was just all in my head. Lyrics I would write down, but piano, I would maybe voice note some things to remember, but it would be how I write other things too, is just like plunking down on the piano and then playing them until I remember them.
Wow. No, yeah, it's really interesting, because I like that's something I've always struggled with. I've always been big on repetition.
Yeah.
If I have to do one verse and I do another verse, then I want the hook of that verse to be the same every single time, right? And then I'll pick my lyrics so that it works like that. So it's really something for me it's actually something I'm kind of experimenting with right now, is to try and do something more like this, where let's just let the lyric and the melody go where it wants to go. And it's not necessarily a repetitive thing, but I still find myself drawn back to the, you need a da-da-da here, and you need a da-da-da on that side, and then, mirrors and, reflecting it and that sort of thing, right? So
totally, yeah.
Really, really fascinating.
Yeah, looking at this, I don't know, I'm trying to think of how I would approach this. I don't know if my brain works that way. We had a show last week with someone talking about synesthesia, the listening music and seeing shapes or colors. But I don't know if I could do this without writing it down, because I don't know if I'd be able to to remember that complexity of melody. But you have a classical background, I believe, though, don't you?
Way in the background, though.
You say it's way in the background, but it's creeping out. Like it's creeping out pretty good.
It's creeping out, I suppose. Yeah. But I was never good at reading music.
Yeah. And it depends on what classical music you're talking about. Like a lot of classical music, classical music in some regards, gave us those standards for repeating stuff and theme variation and et cetera, et cetera. That's kind of the basis for it. This is actually making me think of like progressive rock, because I've always been a big fan of progressive rock. Like Genesis, for example, has in 1973, they released an album called Foxtrot. The second side of it, because it was an LP, the second side of it had one little guitar instrumental thing that was like 90 seconds. And the next track was 23 minutes long. And it was a suite that went through, 7 movements and stuff. And then there's some reprisals, and the middle section was super weird compared to everything else. And, and it was just like this massive of undertaking. And I've seen videos of them performing it live, and it's like, whoa, like really, really complicated, really, really complex. So it kind of reminded me of that, at least that's a bit of a grander scale in a lot of ways. But there are some elements of that, and of course, progressive rock borrows a lot from classical music too.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, this one, like recording it was kind of where it started breaking my brain a bit, because I knew, like, anytime I played it, it was one piece, and I knew the ends and the titles of the segments and the movements. But when we recorded it, we recorded them separately. And so that was breaking my brain a little, because I would record it thinking, okay, the chord in the last song was this. So like, I don't want it to feel like a new one is starting, but I want it to feel like it's blending in. So should we record it as the two together, or will we just make that work later? And once we started adding in different instrumentation, it unfolded to make sense to record each of them separately, because then I would we recorded live vocal and lead vocal and piano together, and then I did some Bee Gees after, and we added strings and woodwinds, and a couple of them have little drum, the drums. So it made sense to record them separately, but then it's so funny to open a session that's 30 seconds long, and then
I was kind of wondering about, because like if I put down my producer hat, my inclination would be 1 15-minute segment, and then at the very at the very end of it, then you put your cuts in where you want the different tracks to be, if you even want to release those different tracks, or just dump the whole thing as one. I mean, I don't know, like when you do digital distribution, like to Spotify or other services, they put a limit on the length of the song. Really?
Yeah, I got bounced back, but there was like,
so you couldn't upload your thing as a 15-minute suite as one thing.
You could. They would do that, but like you can't upload, which is wild that I could do it. But DistroKid had a thing where you can't have an album where the average song length is under a minute, which mine is for sure. So I did do a full live take of the whole thing, not produced, like not no additional instrumentation, just solo voice and electric keys, just as a one take, so that I could add it as the album to make the average length go up.
I see.
As a counter to it. But then I thought, okay, let me try it this other way, and I switched to CD Baby so that I wouldn't run into that
So
problem.
CD Baby doesn't have that limitation. You can.
They did for singles.
Okay. So if you had a 1-minute signal, they wouldn't let you do it.
Yeah. So my singles that I chose were the longer ones, because my first single was supposed to be the very first song, it's not me. And then it got bounced back because it said that it was like a jingle or a ringtone or something. And I thought, okay, well, I'll reevaluate.
You could use that as a ringtone if you want.
Well, yes, we could. So, are there services that offer? Are there services that offer gapless playback? Can't think of any. Does Apple?
Because like playing your stuff back on Bandcamp, there's a blip in between each one, right?
Yeah. So with Spotify, it and all the other ones, it just runs through.
Oh, does it? Okay.
Yeah.
Will this be available on CD?
No. Not in the works.
It's kind of ideal for CD because CDs are gapless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because you
could put this on a 45. Heck.
Out of my own curiosity, I tried to put it on shuffle.
Oh yeah.
I think on paper it would work. Like thematically, I think it would be kind of cool to tell a different trajectory of.
Oh yeah.
Do the Quentin Tarantino edit where it's all non-linear.
Yeah, but
around.
I did put it on shuffle on Spotify, and when it first came out, and because the transitions were so specific to the bleed of how they all went, it like sounds bad. It doesn't work.
It
work for me. Don't try to shuffle it. Yeah, because I mean that makes sense. If the intention was for a certain order, it just works in that order for this one.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah, not a lot of people do that. I mean, I remember one of my favorite artists, This Mortal Coil. I think it's this It'll End in Tears. I think that it was basically gapless. It was sort of a long work where all the pieces kind of flowed into each other or slammed up next to each other, which was interesting. And then, but although I've never actually listened to it on streaming, I don't know how it would work on streaming. But it's an interesting thing to have to deal with because streaming is so focused on singles now, on individual track.
I do remember way back in the day when iTunes first came out as a desktop program to import your CDs into. I dropped in Abbey Road. The second side of the last half of Abbey Road is all strung together, short, 90-second, 2-minute songs, whatever. It was awful. And then finally, when they introduced gapless playback, it was fine. But what I ended up doing was ripping the whole CD into a WAV file, cutting out that last segment as like the thing that it was supposed to be, and then dropping that into iTunes so I could actually listen to it as the artist intended.
Yeah.
Right. And then they introduced gapless playback. I'm like, I don't need to do that more. But it's it's not very often. I mean, I've seen it a couple of times in the rock world. Sloan released an album, I think 2016, which is a lot of the tracks. It's a double album, 30 songs, and a lot of them are pretty short, and a lot of them kind of bleed into each other, which is kind of cool. Sheepdogs did that a few years back. To me, it was an homage to Abbey Road, where it was just like 5 or 6 songs sort of strung together, and you have to listen to it in order. If you try shuffle playing that, it
doesn't work. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the kind of fun thing about. Oh, sorry.
Oh, please.
About like when I structured my first album, figuring out the order was such an important part to me. And then after that, I can shuffle around and it can make a totally different narrative for me in my head. And what I ended up landing on was I don't regret, and I liked that order, but that project can exist in a shuffled way, I think, to kind of curate a different story over it, which I think is kind of cool.
Well, what kind of feedback are you getting from your fans? Are people willing to listen to the whole 15-minute suite as a single entity? Or are they putting the whole thing into their Spotify whatevers and it just shuffles through everything and so you get a little bit of this, a little bit?
I think they're listening. I mean, on a base level, 15 minutes is not long, but I know that when you see, oh, there's 18 songs, that like it feels like a commitment to be able to, at least if I were to be brought that, I think, okay, I need to set aside time to focus. And I think it is a lot to ask of people to have a focused session of listening, because I think a lot of music can easily exist as something in the background. And this, I've kind of succumbed to the fact that whatever people hear, they hear.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm grateful that there have been many people who have listened to it top to bottom. And it is interesting hearing people have favorite songs off of it, because I think, I think I maybe lean towards having favorite songs to play, or certain times of my life in which different songs are favorite ones for me, but I still do view it as a whole. So to think of something like it'd be like watching a movie and thinking, oh, that's my favorite scene it feels so strange to kind of pick out, but I so find it really interesting, and I'm grateful that people can have that if they want.
You think that do you think that years from now, when you're looking back your whole repertoire and you're doing a live show, you might just pull out, the ones that are like fan favorites from this EP and maybe string those together in a different way?
Yeah,
something like that as a kind of miniature version of this suite.
Yeah,
like
totally. I sometimes think about the first time I played this there were 4 songs, and now there's 18. So it has existed in different ways, and I'm sure I can construct a totally another version of the suite and reorder things.
Yeah. Do a re-edit.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Neat.
What's the next step with this release? Are you getting try to get it out to college radio, or just how are you promoting it? What are you doing with it?
Well, I made a big film for it, and that's gonna start to come out soon, hopefully, and kind of in a similar realm, because of the 18 short movements. I wanted each segment to be directed by a different director, so I brought together 13 directors. A few of us did more than one segment. And so that kind of the next step to pair the visuals, or it's done, but I haven't put it out in full yet. And yeah, this one has been a kind of quieter, because it's unconventional and harder to promote in a commercial way, which I think is totally fine, and I'm happy with it.
But they're short enough that they might even make good Instagram reels and TikToks. And,
totally, yeah.
I've been pushing it on that just because here's 35 seconds anyway. So hey.
Totally, yes.
And it's a complete song in 35 seconds. So.
Yeah, that is very true. I'm working on it.
Very cool.
Great stuff.
Wow.
Really neat thing.
Really interesting stuff. When your video's done, you should certainly send it our way. We'll definitely include it on the show post.
Okay, sounds good.
Even after the fact.
Yeah.
It'll be fun to add. Okay, I'm here in the band. I think that's all the time we have on Song Talk Radio. Special thanks to Amanda Sum. And where can our listeners find out more about you and hear some more material?
Yeah, all my stuff, both my theater work and my music work, can all be found through my website, amandasum.com, or on Instagram and all of those things, where you can find it funneled through the website.
All right, we'll definitely send our listeners there from the show post for this episode. And we want to hear from you. So please send us your comments on Facebook or Instagram to @SongTalkRadio, or send us an email at feedback@songtalk.ca. Also be sure to check out our YouTube channel for live performance videos and full episodes, and subscribe today to the Song Talk Radio podcast on your favorite podcast provider. You can find links to all the products, books, and web services we mentioned on the show on our resources page on the website. And please join us at our next monthly Song Talk meetup, whether you're in Toronto for in-person meetups or anywhere in the world for our online meetups. It's free to join on meetup.com and free to attend. Bring a song and a lyric sheet and get constructive feedback from other songwriters. Stop by songtalk.ca for the link. You can follow me at neilmodi.com. You can follow Phil.
PhilEmery.ca.
Amanda, what's your favorite social media channel? Where do you post the most?
Instagram, probably.
Instagram, probably. And be sure to stop by the website, songtalk.ca, to browse past shows and find out how you can be a guest. Thanks for tuning in, and keep on writing.
Yay.
Wow.
What
cool.
a neat project.
Thank you.
Yeah, super cool.
Yeah.
Look forward to seeing the video of 13 directors.
Yes.
You've got to
Yeah,
get
that's going to be very interesting.
I love how it turned out. So
Yeah. Are you starring in all of them, or is it more abstract than that?
yeah, I'm in all of them. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, very cool.
Yes.
Mosquito.
Soon.
All right. Well, we'll send you an email when it comes out,
Okay.
probably
Sounds good.
Sunday or Monday, and
Okay.
share it amongst your peeps, as the
Will
kids like to
do.
say. Okay.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you on
Great
the
to
show
see you.
again.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Okay, take
Take care.
care.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Wow, super
Interesting
nifty.
stuff.
Yeah, very, very cool. I so went through some of the similar things when I was doing my asymmetry EP.
Yeah.
Stringing it all together, and I did a little video on my YouTube channel about the mastering process where I did have one key change from one song to another song that was really, really abrupt and really, really jarring. And so I rewrote the instrumental outro for one of the songs so that kind of softened that
Right.
transition. So that was like, my songs are done. Everything's written. I'm finished. And I just got to string it together as a one project and mastering. And then when that abutment hit, it was like, oh man, I got to do something with that. It's not good. I actually went back to the original song and be like, okay.
It would be interesting to write a bunch of stuff and then write it so that they could all sort of go in any order and still work.
Yeah.
That would be a challenge.
That would be interesting. You probably couldn't have overlaps. You could have abrupt transitions. Like for my EP, like stuff was like I like even in the mastering session, I lined up everything on the grid, even though the tempos were different. So I had tempo changes throughout the mastering session, and so if a song did just end and then the next one began, it was literally on the next quarter note.
Beat. Oh, right.
So everything lined up like perfectly because I didn't want it to I didn't want to sort of eyeball it, you know.
Right.
I wanted it to be like mathematically precise.
Oh, wow. Yeah, a lot of stuff to think about, you know.
Yeah. It's a really interesting sort of creative thing as well because I have to think about what was the first song, and because the first song has kind of a fade in, and the last song has very much a fade out. That's the only song that fades out. So I knew I had to put that one. And when I wrote it, I'm like, this is going to be the last one because I'm doing this fade out thing at the end. That's going to be the last song in the EP. Everything else is going to be, I don't know what's 2, 3, 4, 5, but you know, it could be any which way, whatever. Trying to figure that out. And I was pretty confident what the first one was going to be because it had more of a build up instrumental intro bringing you into the whole thing. So who knows if anyone's listening to it at all, number one, and number two, are they just shuffling it on a Spotify? I don't
Well, that's
know.
true.
When people ask for songs for a Spotify playlist on various things, on Facebook or whatever, songwriters groups, or I'm making a playlist of stuff. I mean, I always send in like the first track and that's it.
Yeah.
Right. But the way it ends is just like It just you can actually hear the start of the second song sort of starting to build because there is an overlap there, but then it just cuts off. And it's not a very good ending unless you actually just go into the second song.
But, well, yeah, it's an interesting thing to play around with.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Also got the. I also saw. You remember Mike Enjo? He dropped a video the other day about the new Studio One 7 features.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, they've added. They call it a launcher pad.
Okay.
We had something like this in Cakewalk. It was called the Matrix View, where you could drop in loops from your timeline or from the loop library, and there were rows and cells, and you could trigger whole rows, you could trigger whole cells, you can set them to one shots or looping or whatever.
Like
and
the NPC thing, right?
Yeah, like an NPC thing. And you can actually, and in Cakewalk, I think in Studio One now too, you can actually hit the record button and just like hit the pads with your mouse, and it would record your performance. As it were, right? And I'm like, I used it once in Cakewalk when I was in the midst of moving and I didn't have access to my keyboard.
Right.
I just tried doing a loop-based thing and like mousing and stuff with MIDI or whatever. And there's a couple of other features, but the only one that stands out for me as a heavy virtual instrument user, a master transpose.
Oh,
because if you want to change the key of your song and you've got 12 different MIDI instruments, you got to go through every single MIDI track, +2, +2, +2, +2, +2.
Oh,
+2.
right. Yeah, that's annoying.
And of course you don't do the drums because then you'll end up with different drums. If they're virtual drums, you'll end up with a completely different thing, right? So this new master transpose transposes all your MIDI. It transposes audio too. Right. And in the individual tracks, there's a little button in there to say ignore the master transpose for your MIDI for the MIDI drums. You'd be like, no,
you don't want that. No.
Or key switches, a track with key switches or something like that.
Oh yeah.
People like that would be bad if that was transposed. So, so that's kind of the only feature I would want.
But also you actually do key changes quite a bit, so it might be worthwhile.
I suppose, but it was, for me, it was always the thing because I've got virtual singers who can sing in any key. Now I kind of write it in whatever key and they can handle it. When I was doing vocals myself, sometimes I'd have to take it down.
Right.
A tone or two, right. To get better into my range, that sort of thing. But to be honest, I haven't done that in a long time. I'm just kind of better maybe at picking whatever key works now. I don't know. Like I just haven't had to do that in a while. So maybe even if I had that feature, I wouldn't even use it. I don't know.
Well, that's true. But if that's, the same thing with Cubase 13 is, like they had a special on and I could have gotten it for $79, but there was nothing in it that I wanted.
Yeah.
Like there's a bunch of things in Cubase I wish they would work better than it did. And stuff that's been asked for, literally for decades on the forums, and not one of those things was added.
Yeah.
So it's like, well,
what's getting weird when I was trying to do some instrument stuff for my songwriting challenge last night, and Reactor wasn't loading. A Native Instruments Reactor wasn't loading. Complete some of the instruments in Complete were saying can't find the library, or in Contact would be like can't find the library. I was like, what the hell's going on here? What's going on? So I reinstalled Contact 6 and it still wouldn't work. And it was like, what's going on? And finally decided to try Contact Player 8. So now I'm now I'm 2 versions behind with like the full version of Contact. Right. So a lot of recent songs, they didn't work in Contact 6. So I had to use Contact 7 Player. Now songs won't work or patches won't work in Contact 7 Player. I have to put them on. So if I load up an older song now, even when it's a few months old, and I had Contact 7 Player running, I'm guessing some of those instruments are not going to work. I have to instantiate a new thing of Contact 8 and redo the patch, or maybe I can save the patch and still import it. But I'm anticipating opening up, sessions that are even like a few months to a year old, and all the Contact stuff is going to be broken because they don't. Because when I did finally start using Contact 8 Player, everything worked fine.
Okay, so you just have to,
so I tried 6 full. I tried Contact 7 Player, didn't work. Android 8 player worked well. So it just makes me think that older things that have Contact 7 or 6 in them,
Oh.
I'm going to open them up and they're
So
not going to be able to play.
what changed? Like, what got updated? Like, did Contact get updated?
Yeah, well, they every time they release a new complete package, they update Contact.
Okay.
So I'm on.
Have you updated something?
No. I'm still on 13 Ultimate. They're on 15 now.
Did your OS change or something?
No. I'm putting the blame squarely on Night of Instruments. I'm like it's just not, stuff just doesn't work. Sometimes they have done that in the past too with plugins. Even like there was one Reactor plugin, Monarch, that I wanted to use, and I had to reprogram stuff because it didn't work in the older version. And sometimes, and back in those days, it used to come up and say you need the latest version of Contact to run this plugin,
right,
or this instrument. So that one was Reactor actually, but Reactor I think is still in version 6. I don't. There's no Reactor player as far as I know for the new stuff because there were a couple of patches in Reactor that the Reactor stuff just wouldn't show up. I learned Reactor and nothing's there.
I think one of the I've heard other people do this, and I don't do it as much as I should. But I know I wish I did it for really old songs that I had, is whenever you have a VST and you're at the end of the program, at the end of the project, is render that VST. Yeah. Still keep the VST, but that way you still have the audio if worse comes to worse.
Yeah, I need to start doing that. I did that for my EP. I saved all the VST patches, like all the individual instrument patches, and I rendered everything down, But when stuff works, you just I guess you get it in your brain that it'll work.
Well, and you're done with it, right?
And you're done with it, yeah. And then that's that's the other thing. So if I have to reprogram, and I'll probably reprogram it better because it'll be second time around. So yeah, I'll tweak the patch anyway. Like I know enough about synthesizer editing now that I can recreate something fairly easily.
Yeah, pretty close.
So it's not a big deal, but. I went through that on my EP because I took 5 years to write that. There was one synthesizer I used for the first song that was 5 years old, and I literally didn't even have that plugin anymore.
Oh, right.
Because it shipped with my Akai keyboard. I sold the Akai keyboard and I gave away the licenses for that stuff with the thing. So it's just not there. Period. Right?
Oh, right.
So I literally had to recreate it using another synth, but I got it it was very close.
Got the job done.
What are you going to do, right? That's just the joys of working with virtual instruments. Your guitars never go out of, they don't stop working because whatever, right?
But
software update.
It's criminally hard to get the exact same song, same sound.
Oh yeah.
One day to the next. It's just if you're playing it harder or softer, or I use pods, but even there, if the dials are off a little bit, it sounds different.
But you save presets on your pods, right?
Yeah, but even then, it's trying to get it perfectly is really, really challenging. So. But,
even then, like you plug in your gain, even if it's slightly different than it was when you recorded before, it'll sound different. It'll have a little more saturation, a little less whatever. Like,
if the strings like lighter or harder, and
or your strings are more worn out or less worn out, or they're new,
or you're playing a different part. Yeah, it's quite, and that's what people say, that you should treat it like our computers, like what they did with an old time tape recorder, is you have the track and then you render it and then that's your track. We're so used to going, well, I might want to change that sound, so you keep everything in its raw. Whereas before, it's like you were in the studio, you had your Prophet 5, you put down the Prophet 5 track, and that was it. You didn't go back and you didn't.
Yeah, if you wanted to redo it, you'd redo the whole thing.
Yeah.
If you wanted to fix one mistake 3 weeks later.
You didn't.
You didn't. Yeah, either you didn't or you just record the whole damn thing again.
Yeah. And most of the times they didn't because they didn't have time. So
yeah. Well, yeah, time. But that's what I find with vocal recording too. Like you can't ask someone to come in 3 weeks later and expect to get the same tone. The humidity in the room is different. mic distance might be a little bit different. Your gain set might be
They're
different.
actually different. They
Yeah.
are actually different.
Yeah.
They're 3 weeks older.
Yeah. They're literally different. They might have had a burrito that day when they didn't have one before.
Yeah. It's amazing any of this stuff works.
I know, eh? It's goofy. All right, man.
Great. Well,
Okay.
have a good Thanksgiving,
Yeah,
and I'll talk to you on
too.
Tuesday.
Sounds good.
Great.
All right, cheers. Bye-bye.